The Battlefront series of games is often held to an incredibly high standard, and is what the vast majority of people will first think of when asked to come up with the name of a Star Wars game. The titles are synonymous with quality and are usually regarded as the best Star Wars games ever released. But to be fair, the competition consists of Super Bombad racing, so the bar is quite low. That being said, one title in the series sticks out from the rest, being known by most people as the game that EA took a step too far, the game that soiled the series' name forever. Star Wars Battlefront 2. Flashback to May 10th, 2016, a sequel to the reboot of the Battlefront series was announced, causing fans all over the world to eagerly anticipate the next entry in the series. The previous game, Star Wars Battlefront, was released in 2015, so the promise of another game already raised a few eyebrows as to what EA was up to, but for the most part people were excited to see their beloved series continue. But the next major piece of news surrounding the game would be almost a year later, when in April of 2017 the final release date of November that same year was announced. People were brimming with excitement to see what the new Battlefront entry would bring to the table, and whether or not it would live up to the expectations laid down by the previous installment. However, things quickly took a turn for the worst when players who got access to the beta releases of the game discovered the wealth of microtransactions, which at the time were at the peak of controversy among gamers. It's important here to understand that this was a trend that had been rapidly growing in the industry, with most new games implementing microtransactions, which often gave players unfair advantages over other players, or could be used as a method to avoid putting effort into the game. This made the very concept widely hated within the gaming community, as it took away any sense of pride for accomplishing things in-game, as someone with enough money could just buy their way to the same success. This is where Battlefront 2 comes in, as it included by far the worst examples of this problem to date, with loot boxes in the game granting the possibility of substantial advantages over other players, and unlocking them by playing the game was extremely difficult, as the in-game currency systems rewarded players with random amounts of currency that weren't tied to skill level at all. This meant that unlocking new characters and gaining new better equipment in the game was nearly impossible to do by just playing the game, with one player taking to Reddit to explain that despite them paying $80 for the deluxe version of the game, they would have to play 40 hours in-game just to earn enough credits to play as Darth Vader. Clearly this was a strategy to encourage people to pay for in-game credits through microtransactions, but EA responded with a comment stating, "The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment for unlocking different heroes." This comment quickly became the most downvoted post in Reddit history, with over 667,000 downvotes, enough to get the comment into the Guinness Book of World Records. This quite clearly got the message across to EA, who quickly reduced the amount of credits required to unlock characters by 75%, and removed microtransactions entirely upon launch of the game. For many people, this controversy turned them away from the game entirely, and the number of players in the game has diminished substantially over time. So, what is the game like today? 3 years later and the game is still receiving regular updates, with the most recent, at time of recording, adding more content from the original trilogy of Star Wars films, something much requested by fans. One thing that is incredibly clear to see is that the developers on the game truly do care about the games they're working on, with new modes, maps and characters still being released based on fan requests. The level of interaction between the game's developers and the community is brilliant, making the community around the game feel a lot warmer and more welcoming than you might expect. This has led me to the assumption that it was probably EA's interference that led to the horrible microtransaction controversy back at release, a decision that likely irritated the developers a lot. I can only imagine how heartbreaking it must be as a developer to have the funding body of your game tell you that you must implement a system to milk your players of as much money as possible. Now, I should probably clarify that I am a huge fan of this game. Everything from the campaign to the single player instant action is incredibly fun in my opinion, and personally I'd argue that what the game has become with years of care and effort from the development team is the best Battlefront title to date, and has more than made up for the controversy at launch. I'm not going to go into every aspect of the game here, there is far too much content to get through in one video, and frankly I think you should try the game for yourself. Give it a chance if you haven't already, especially if you were turned away from the game during the microtransaction controversy. There is plenty to stick your teeth into, whether you want to go at it alone or exclusively play the online multiplayer modes. There is so much in this game that you'll love, Star Wars fan or not. And if you ever find yourself as invested in the game as I am, get involved in the community. It's really welcoming to new players, and the level of interaction between fans and devs is a really unique experience. Not many big budget games like this make you feel like you've got a say in what it becomes. To conclude, the controversy surrounding Battlefront 2 at launch was a colossal event for the gaming industry, causing a ripple that can still be felt to this day, and while it may have damaged the game's reputation permanently, it's hard to deny that it had a positive impact on the gaming genre as a whole. For the first time ever, the entire gaming community stood together to oppose a greedy corporation and let them know when they'd overstepped a boundary. Thanks to this, microtransactions have died down in gaming, only really being prevalent in free-to-play games, and the AAA titles that do still incorporate microtransactions do so sparingly and reasonably. While this wouldn't be the last time a corporation would take liberties with microtransactions, it helped make it clear that people weren't just going to blindly accept them as a part of gaming anymore. As for Battlefront 2, it is far from a dead game yet, and thankfully has received some much needed love and care from the brilliant developer team. Now, the game has beyond repaid the debts left by its infamous controversy, and it can finally continue on, as players revisit the game and fall in love with the amazing experience it has become. Never before has a better Phoenix metaphor been encapsulated in the tale of a video game.